My name is Christopher O. I'm a principal consultant at Turner and Townsend, specializing in healthcare and estate strategies.
Thank you very much. And why did you decide to study property at the University of Aberdeen?
I've always really found the built environment and everything to do with sort of the way in which the built environment works really interesting ever since, well, since I can remember. So it's something about the complexity of how cities, how urban environments they interact, how they fulfill the function. So it's just something that has fascinated me forever. I mean, I'm a big computer game fan, but all of the computer games I play are the city building ones, the factory building ones. So it's all about sort of building stuff. As for why Aberdeen, I wanted a city campus that was away from home. So it was, I mean, Aberdeen from Newcastle is quite a long way to go, but yeah, no, it's definitely worth it, and it's a sort of a great sort of got a nice feel to it. The campus, the sort of mix of history and just it's connected, but it's also got its own little bubble to kind of be in. It's a really nice campus there.
That's nice. So the next question is, your early career involved working in Northumberland County Council on asset management. How did your experience influence your transition into private sector?
I think the my time at Northumberland Council was straight after university, so I mean it was almost 20 years ago now. But I think what the bit that I found there was that it was the opportunity to interact with big data, and that's like everybody's got big data now. But back then we still had these really essentially weak laptops that really couldn't process anything. So we didn't have the processing capability to sort of manage big data. So it was probably at the sort of the dawn of big data was when I was coming out of university. Now it was a chance to kind of play with that. But what I did find was that nobody really understood how to manage it, how to manipulate it, how to sort of do all these wonderful things that we now just take for granted. And we have big processors and computers that can do it. So it kind of identified to me that, there's a need for public sector to kind of manage things, but there's also a need for the private sector to kind of support it with specialized skills that can do project-based work, like how do you assemble all of the data? How do you manage it? And then allow the local authority to kind of run it thereon. For me, the how do you manage it and how do you kind of transform that data? That was the interesting bit for me. The sort of one-off project element, which kind of led me to want to do more private sector work.
Interesting. What were some of the key lessons that you learned from your time as a construction consultant at Holland Partners?
So I was still very very young and sort of fresh out of university by the time I got to Holland Partners. So I think the big one for me was just always check your work.
Mm,
The kind of yeah, I was the youngest, I was the most junior person in the firm, but it was still essential to kind of get my bit right. And not do all it wasn't somebody else's responsibility. It was my responsibility to do my job right. So always checking the work. I think although I was the youngest, the most junior person, or obviously the least experienced person in the company, my kind of time with big data demonstrated to me that I was really good at Excel and I could do things with Excel that nobody else in the organization could do. So whilst I didn't have the experience that sort of a career had given me, I had the skills in how to manage and manipulate data and do things in Excel that other people couldn't. And that was, hugely useful, to kind of demonstrate my capability as a young professional. Um, but it was also a great opportunity for me to kind of learn from more experienced people and work with more experienced people. So there was some really good cost managers that I worked with, project managers, and I learned a lot from them. And I was able to kind of interact with them by using the skills that I had to support the experience that they had amassed.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And the next question is, can you walk us through the key milestones that led you to your current role as a principal consultant at Turner and Townsend?
Yeah, so straight out of university, it was my sort of spell at Northumbria that led to my time at Hall and Partners, which is a private, as a sort of a consultancy firm. I spent a number of years at Hall and Partners, and there was a particular project which was a workplace one. Again, workplace is very common now. Back then, it was kind of new and exciting, and there wasn't really much of a market for it. And I really wanted to be on that commission. So once I got onto that commission, I was then seconded to a client, and eventually I really enjoyed the project. So I moved with the project when the client wanted to in-house it, and that was with Home Group Housing Association doing their office strategy. So I left Hall and Partners to follow the project, joined Home Group and kind of worked with them for a number of years on the office strategy project. As kind of all strategy projects do, is, there's the initial strategy where you work it all out, and then it turns into the delivery, and then after the delivery it's kind of finished. So after the sort of the project was sort of coming to an end, I was looking for, what is the next challenge? What do I want to do next? And I'd really enjoyed the workplace thing. And so I sort of took a job with Holt's Yard. So I left Home Group, joined Holt's Yard, um, and spent some time with there, but kind of wanted a more strategic strategy type role.
Mm.
So after about a year and a half with Holt's Yard, I then moved to Turner and Townsend. And one of my first commissions there was to support Sage Computing in the relocation of the global headquarters, which is in Newcastle. And then from then I've kind of moved between workplace, but now sort of do a lot more healthcare type work. So I'm sort of specialized in healthcare for Turner and Townsend.
That's very impressive. And as a principal consultant, what strategies do you use to help clients to maximize the value of their real estate portfolios?
Um, I, I've, I mean, there's a number of different things. I guess for me, the ability to combine, um, essentially buildings are functional assets. They are, they're tools that we use to deliver whatever the core activity of the business is. So if it is, if we take healthcare as an example, you're doing a sort of estate strategy, for a healthcare organization, the purpose of the organization is to make people better, is to keep people in good health. So that the buildings need to support that. And ultimately what the buildings are doing is that they're actually, the buildings don't make people healthy themselves. They need the staff, the clinicians. So it's working at how do the buildings support what the people are doing. And we often find that the worst performing buildings are the ones where they're doing something different to what they were intended to do. So there's some compromise, and that leads generally to really poor outcomes. Um, so it's all about understanding how does the building perform, and how do you kind of transition that to either, we need to get rid of this building, or we need to change it in a way, or change how we use it. I'm always in favour that we should be, the building should be supporting the activities that are happening inside of them, rather than defining them. We do find a lot of buildings where the function that is taking place inside is having to change to the way in which the building has been designed, either because it was designed badly or it was never designed for this purpose. But there's that compromise reduces the quality of the output that people can deliver from in it. So it's kind of identifying how that works, where it's happening, and how you can resolve it.
Interesting. And how do you approach healthcare estate planning differently from other sectors?
I think healthcare it is about making people better. So the most important thing is that the building supports the healthcare outcome. That's the number one. So anything that we do has to have a positive healthcare outcome,
Mm.
which is difficult when you're looking at how maybe comparing it to other buildings where it's, aesthetics are important, and it doesn't really matter. So, offices, for instance, they have very dramatic aesthetic out, or can have very dramatic aesthetics to them. Um, but for healthcare, it's, drilling it back to how does every pound that we spend building a healthcare building have a healthcare outcome to it? So keeping it very focused, and a very functional building. Um, and I think within that, whilst you have designed the perfect healthcare building, the rate at which we are transforming healthcare at the moment as a service is dramatic. We saw a huge change during COVID. That kind of inertia, it slowed slightly, but the rate of development within healthcare, and changes to it are very fast at the moment. And we normally look at buildings over, 20, 30, 40, 50 years plus. So designing a building that is able to support that transformation, and the speed of it is now particularly challenging. The way in which we treated people 10 years ago, in healthcare is now very different to how we treat them now. And with the advent of more digital monitoring of patients, potentially the use of AI, that is going to have another impact in how we help people. Um, the way in which people are aging as well is a sort of another great challenge. So the number of patients with complex healthcare needs, so multiple things or multiple ailments, which are all interacting to cause them, poor health, it is increasing significantly. So, over 65s, there's a large number. By the time you get to over 90s, it's pretty much the whole population has complex healthcare needs. So creating healthcare buildings that can support very complex patients, all of which have different needs, is particularly challenging. Really exciting,
Mhm.
but very challenging.
Interesting. And what role does sustainability play in real estate portfolio management, and how do you help clients to incorporate it in their strategies?
I guess sustainability is in some ways it's getting harder to implement. We've done a lot of the quick wins, the easy insulations, and just retrofit something on top that didn't really have an impact. So a lot of those organizations have been doing this for, at least a decade. They've been making transitions. So it's now getting to the point where we're having to make harder decisions about how do we actually achieve the environmental goals that we're wanting to achieve as an organization. And part of that is needing to change the habits that we have developed over, well, since our formation, really, in how we use space, how we use buildings. And that is it sounds easy. It's very difficult to actually implement in practice because it's changing the way that we use utilities, how we use buildings. It's changing our habits. And invariably that's going to lead to sort of cost implications, or particularly when you're looking at healthcare, it's about the functioning of the asset. It's about how do you make people healthy. So if we want to make a building more sustainable, we've got to stop doing things in a certain way. We've got to change the way we're doing, and ultimately the buildings are going to become more expensive as we have to implement higher levels of technology, which increase the amount of cost. And when you start factoring cost into it, everybody has a finite budget for how their organization is run, or the thing that they have to do, which happens in the building. There is a finite amount of money available to do it. So if we're spending more on making the building sustainable, then we have to stop doing something else. And taking healthcare as the example, that is a very difficult decision about how do we make a building more sustainable? How do we run a more expensive building that is sustainable, but also deliver the same or even better healthcare outcomes for patients? So it's always going to be there, but it's definitely getting harder.
Interesting. And looking back, what is the proudest moment in your career?
I, I think it's quite, it's a challenging one to think up. I mean, I guess there's a couple of things. Probably one of them is just that I'm here. I have dyslexia. I've always had dyslexia. I was the bottom set for English. I was the second bottom set for maths. Whilst I had a great time at university, I didn't come out with a particularly amazing degree at all. And I didn't make any of the sort of sort of shiny graduate programs that I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this will be vying for. So that always kind of there was always this sort of barrier to me attaining, success ultimately. And I think part of that is, the narrow definition of success, particularly when you're at school, you're at university, it's measured by the grades that you attain. When you get into the workplace, it's much bigger, the definition of success. So I think to be where I am now as a sort of specialist in healthcare, I'm delivering some amazing transformational projects. That for me, I'm just very proud that I'm able to be here doing what I'm doing. Um, you know, the work in healthcare, you know, that's that is great. It's I was never going to be a doctor or anything, but the work that I've done, I can see that it has improved access to healthcare, because I've done projects that have increased the capacity of healthcare buildings. We can now see more patients. So having the ability to kind of see what I'm doing and then the sort of measurable outcomes in that sense I'm very proud of that.
That's impressive, very impressive. And what advice do you have for students aspiring to work in real estate? Maybe there are some books or courses or networks that you found useful for yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, the real estate is vast. I think we are one of the largest employers in the world if you put in all of the different elements of it. So I guess for a young person thinking about joining real estate, I think think about what challenges you enjoy overcoming, because real estate is all about overcoming challenges. So that there's it's very different, the types of things we do. There's architects, there's surveyors like myself, but then there's lots of different types of surveyors as well. There's land surveyors, cost surveyors, general practice, which is closest to me. So it's thinking about what are the challenges that I enjoy, and then finding, because it'll be there. Real estate has something for everybody. So it's find the challenges that you like, and then apply that to real estate. For me, computer games were my passion growing up. They still are my passion. And it was the building games. It wasn't the designing element. It was the solving the problem using the building, which is kind of very close to what I do now.
Mm.
And I guess, like myself, I didn't make any of the graduate programs. So, everybody that's finishing university desperately wants to be in a graduate program, and they are great. But don't give up. If you don't make it onto a graduate program, there's other ways into the industry. There's a lot of different employers out there, and once you're in, you can build up your network and you can get to the place where you want to go. Potentially using your dissertation, which was for me a differentiator. It showed my passion and sort of interest in a particular area, and that was what picked me up, or got me identified by when I joined Hall and Partners. I think as for the reading and the networks, for me, I've found reading The Economist really useful. Not particularly focused on real estate, but I think for anybody, The Economist is a really useful newspaper in understanding how it talks about something and tells you what the outcomes are. As a consultant, it's all about demonstrating, this is the problem and this is why, it's included in the report and how it can be solved. So it's great tool for learning how to write concisely and informatively. I think you've also got to tie that in with how do you think as well as a consultant. Any type of consultant has to be able to think well. And for me, reading books by Alan de Botton were really useful. I also read a very good book by Claire Johnson as well called Scaling People, and that was really helpful in just understanding how does a team operate? How should a team operate? Because there's lots of teams, they don't all operate really well. But I think in terms of, I guess the final one you mentioned, which was, networks and things, there are loads of great networks out there run by all different bodies, but I think the key one for me is build your own network with your cohort. So, don't go to the networking event and try and, chat up the CEO of another company in the hope that they'll kind of give you the sort of land you the next commission or something. You want to you want to work with the people that you've finished university with that are at your level, and then as you all progress through the industry, they will go off in their direction and escalate in their career. You'll go off in your direction and escalate in your career, but you can still cross over, and sort of achieve really good things because you've built up that relationship. So yeah, a lot of different ways that you can kind of develop.
Interesting. And what are some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen, from your social life in Aberdeen?
Yeah, so I mean, I made some great friends. I mean, 20 years on, we just had a weekend together, with some of them. I was on the fencing team,
Mhm.
which was great fun. We sort of traveled, we did all the competitions around the country and things. So that was, I mean, that possibly explained why I spent less time, studying and didn't come out with a first. But it was great. I enjoyed doing the sports, and the people. I mean, in some ways, I even quite enjoyed the weather. I mean, it's really cold and dark in the winter. But it was kind of strange coming out of the clubs, at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it being daylight. So that took some getting used to in the summer. So the summers are lovely, and the winters are really cold. But yeah, everybody was really nice.